Hello, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Luis Fernando. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing down there and how you got to your current role?
Well, the shrimp industry in Latin America is growing really, really well. If you compare with other regions like Southeast Asia, in Latin America, every year there is pretty much a record, at least in shrimp production.
Okay.
So year after year, not only Ecuador, but Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela have increasing their production.
Okay. How long has that trend been going on for?
In some countries, it has been going ups and downs. But in general, if you put together all the production in several countries, is growing really well.
Okay. And how did you find your way into the South American shrimp industry?
Well, my specialty are shrimp diseases.
Okay.
So for me, a shrimp I'm like a shrimp doctor.
Okay.
So yeah, so my role is quite interesting because every time there are new challenges in terms of new pathologies, new diseases. And definitely we already know that the diseases are one of the major challenges for the shrimp industry, not only Latin America, but in general, worldwide.
Okay, and just to go back a bit, you started out in the University of Arizona studying shrimp pathology. You did your PhD there, and now you're working for...
Yeah, now well, a little bit of my story. I'm originally from Colombia. Then I did my PhD at the University of Arizona because it was the reference laboratory for shrimp diseases under supervision of the well-known Donald Liner. So he was my major advisor. So since then I started working. Then I came back to work on CENIAQUA. It's a research center called CENIAQUA.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe you're aware of that.
In Colombia, yeah.
On the Caribbean side.
Yeah.
And then I was invited to come back to the University of Arizona in 2016. And since then I have been working on mostly research. And then 2 years ago, I was invited to join to one of the largest shrimp companies in the world, Grupo Almar.
Okay.
And right now I'm the animal health manager.
Okay, so as an animal health manager for one of the largest shrimp companies in the world, and you're saying diseases are always a challenge in shrimp, so presumably you're quite a busy man.
I am. There is always new challenges. Sometimes opportunistic pathogens can become aggressive and of course can cause some impact on shrimp industry.
And what are the main challenges in terms of health at the moment in South America?
Well, in general in Latin America, probably the major pathogen right now is white spot, which is a viral pathogen. And definitely it can cause a lot of impact on the shrimp industry.
Okay, and has that been around in South America, Latin America for a long time, or is that...
Yes, the first time white spot appears was in 1999. Of course, previously it has been appears in Southeast Asia. And then the first outbreaks in Latin America, it was in Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Central America. They hit it pretty much at the same time.
Okay.
And of course, if you look at the shrimp production, it went down during that time. And it took a while for the shrimp industry to recover for that episodic.
And so how come you haven't managed to get rid of it?
It's difficult. Once white spot is endemic, as pretty much any pathogen, is so difficult to eradicate it. So in Latin America, unlike what is happening in Asia, because in Asia they have like an exclusion strategy.
Okay.
So basically they want to keep the pathogen away from the culture. In Latin America it's a little bit different because the strategy is the inclusion strategy.
Okay.
So basically is to live and learn how to live with the pathogen.
Okay.
So the strategies are quite different For example, if you think about Asia, they have like a very high stocking density. But in order to do that, they need to have very clean animals. So
Okay.
those are called specific pathogen-free SPF animals. But in Latin America, because we have a different strategy, the inclusion strategy, and people don't use SPF animals, but they use animals that are coming from the shrimp ponds, taking the best animals as a broodstock, and the broodstocks are taken to the maturation lab to produce the offspring. And they have been doing that for several years. So at some point, the animals from Latin America are more robust.
Okay.
So basically, if you compare the survival of animals, let's say that you want to expose them experimentally for white spot, if you have a SPF versus an animal that has been growing under Latin American conditions, these animals survive better.
Okay. And how long has it taken generations to get to that level, or is it quite a quick process?
Yes, it takes a while. For example, if you look at the major shrimp producer in Latin America, which is Ecuador, during the first 10 years after white spot hit first, there was kind of like an increase in production, but it was kind of flat. It was a little bit. But then suddenly, when the animals acquire some tolerance to the virus, is when you really see the shrimp industry growing at least 10 to 15% every year. So definitely, even with the presence of white spot, the animals were performing so well, and the production is kind of what you see in terms of production. I mean, that's when you really see that there is
Okay.
no major impact on white spot on the production side.
And you'd say the breeding strategy was the key part to enable that?
Definitely.
Okay. Interesting. And is that a breeding strategy? You mentioned that in Asia they have a different strategy, the exclusionary one.
Yes.
And in Asia the shrimp production levels are quite steady, or maybe going down a bit. Are they looking at South America and thinking we want some of that? We want to adopt some of that strategy?
Yeah, definitely. In Southeast Asia, as you said, there is no like a increasing in production in the recent years, but in Latin America, year after years, there is an increase in shrimp production. So people from Asia said, "What are you guys doing? So why you are growing really well and we are not?" And in part, is basically the robustness of the shrimp. And now the animals are growing really well. So before growing 1 gram per week, it was a big deal. Now is at least 2 grams per week, 3 grams per week.
Okay.
So basically, and if you're having a tolerant animal against these endemic pathogens, so you're having both. You're having a good grade and a good growth and a good survival.
Okay.
And that is probably part of the reason the production has been increasing steadily every year.
Amazing. And can you export those broodstock, those animals to Asia, or is that playing with fire a little bit?
When you think about from the grow ponds, you take probably the best animals. Let's say that you have a grow pond with a very good survival and the animals growing really well. So you take the best of the best, and those animals are taken as a broodstock, and these broodstocks are used to produce the next generation. So the genetic programs in several parts of the world, they are using some of this stock to improve some of the traits, like a survival, and they are trying to cross them with animals that grows really well in order to have an animal that grows well, but they survive well.
Okay.
Because sometimes we have seen in Asia that the animals grow really well, but sometimes when they are affected by white spot, when they're using the exclusion strategy, but when this strategy fail, they can lose probably up to 99% of the total production.
Right.
So definitely,
Yeah.
it's more risky probably, that strategy.
So do you think they could emulate your success by adopting your strategy? And is that something that you guys could help them with?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you compare Latin America versus Asia, in Asia they have like a small ponds, probably 1 hectare ponds, 0.25 hectares pond. But thanks to the exclusion strategy, they can stock probably 200 shrimp per square meter, 300 shrimp per square meter. In Latin America, it's quite different. First, the ponds, the grow-out ponds are pretty large, 10 hectares, 15 hectares. So they are very large ponds. So the stocking density is far less, maybe 20, 30 shrimp, 40 shrimp per square meter is what is the common practice. So basically, the animals are not SPF. So when you put all together and the animals can have some chronic problems, chronic mortalities, but at the end, you harvest something. Sometimes you have a very good harvest, sometimes you don't have so good harvest, but you always harvest some product. In Asia, for example, when they are hit by some of these diseases, for example, for white spot, sometimes they have to eliminate the pond because they know that they are not going to get anything and the final survival is close to zero. So they prefer to not harvest at all.
Okay. And but even though you've got this this particular program, this particular strategy, there are still challenges for you, aren't there, that are related to changes in the growing conditions?
Always, there are always challenges, and now but some of the important challenges are the climate-related events. Sometimes you have a warmer years, sometimes you have a colder years, and these modulate the presence of some pathogens. For instance, if you have a warmer year and the water temperature is high, it's likely that it's going to be a good year for the shrimp industry. Because, for example, white spot, back on 2001, we discovered that there is a strong effect of white spot and temperature. For instance, you can have all the animals infected with white spot, but if the water temperature is above 31, 32 degrees Celsius, you can have 100% of survival. But if you have the same animals infected and you have it at 26, 28 Celsius degrees, you have 0% of survival. So it's huge difference.
Okay. So how does that tie in with El Niño, for example?
That's a good question. For example, during El Niño, the water temperature is higher versus the average temperature. So it's always a good year for the shrimp industry in Latin America. It's always a good year because if white spot is present, it's not going to cause so many disease because the high temperature helps to avoid the virus to replicate well into the shrimp. So basically, you can have 60, 70, 80% of final survival. That happens when there is like a warmer years. But in contrast, when you have a lower temperatures in the water, is when white spot hits worse. And then you will see the effect of in the production.
But then that might be the case with viruses like white spot, but bacterial infections are worse, aren't they? When it's warm, so it's you always get hit by something.
Yes. There is no the total happiness.
But it's easier for you to, if it's warm, you can deal with the bacterial diseases more easily than the viruses. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. Basically, what happens is, for example, most of the bacteria that affect shrimps are Vibrio. And usually Vibrio has two conditions. Are halophilic bacteria, that means that they need like some salinity in order to replicate well, and also high temperature. For example, the optimal temperature of some pathogenic Vibrio is 32 degrees Celsius. So basically, when you have a warmer years or warmer season, you will be protected from viral diseases like a white spot, HNMB, TSB, but it's when the bacteria all the bacterial problems comes. Because if the water temperature is high, the Vibrio can replicate faster.
Okay.
And then, yeah, in any case, you will have some problems.
Okay.
Either with bacteria and Vibrio. And now another pathogen that probably is becoming more and more important, for example, in Asia, is the Microsporidium, the hepatopancreatic Microsporidium.
Right.
And basically, we have done some work at the University of Arizona, and we prove that this Microsporidium replicates better in higher salinity.
Okay.
So yeah, so
Okay. So there's always something to get you.
there is always something.
Yeah. And that's an emerging problem, the microsporidium, is it?
It is. It is. In Asia, well, it has been already more than 15 years.
Okay.
And at the beginning, I remember when I was doing my PhD with Dr. Leiner, they have the white feces syndrome. That is basically the white discoloration of the gastrointestinal tract. Nobody knew what was the cause. Later on, it was associated with the presence of Microsporidium, and then we were able to prove that the combination of two enteric pathogens, Microsporidium plus opportunistic Vibrio, were able to provoke or cause the white feces.
Okay.
So we saw that from EHP in Asia, and in Latin America, we have seen, well, the first thing that we noticed was in Venezuela. It was it was back on 2016. It was the presence of animal displaying the white discoloration of the gastrointestinal tract. And then when we conducted some histopathology and molecular PCR, we detected EHP.
Right.
And then it was a big deal because the experience of what happened in Southeast Asia could put at risk what happened in Latin America. Later on, we suspect that it's not EHP, but it's a different type of Microsporidium that cause similar lesions than EHP cause.
Okay. And is it causing big losses in the industry?
In countries where this Microsporidium has been present, it's not really a big problem. Only when there are, for example, in Central America, in some countries they have a very high stocking density, and they were having big problems in production when the animals were affected with this Microsporidium. And also you could see the white discoloration, again, the white feces syndrome. You were able to see a big problems in production. The advantage is that in Latin America, the culture practice is to stock at low density. If you compare with Asia, where like a 200, 300 pieces per square meter, in Latin America, the low stocking density, definitely it doesn't allow the Microsporidium to replicate fast and cause damage.
So you've got the advantage of your breeding strategy and your stocking densities are both helping you in Latin America.
Definitely.
And what else can you do? Is there any things you can do in terms of the feeding strategy, biosecurity? What's the sort of, what else can farmers do to combat these issues?
Biosecurity definitely is important, but the concept of biosecurity in Southeast Asia, as I was mentioning, is exclusion. In Latin America is live with the pathogen, but learn how to live with the pathogen. So the biosecurity strategy is to low the stress level, make sure that when you have the eggs and the nuclei, to have the proper disinfection process. Very basic, the disinfection process, like disinfect the nuclei, the eggs with any formalin, iodine, any of these products. It helps to reduce the presence of pathogens. Because what you really want is to cut the pathogen cycle. So basically, if you have a clean post-larvae, you have better chances to have a good harvest at the grow-up conditions.
Okay. And would you ever use things like probiotics, for example?
Oh, definitely. Probiotics are quite important because one of the challenges is that with this increase in shrimp production, the bottom of the grow ponds, definitely it takes a toll. And basically, if you see year after year, crop after crop, the organic matter is increasing in those ponds. So definitely, you need to have a biosecurity strategy, and in those cases, is bioremediation. So yeah, so definitely, everybody puts a lot of emphasis to treat the soil to maintain low the organic matter percentage.
Okay, okay, it's good. And yeah, there's been a lot of talk about how Latin American shrimp production is continuing to increase. There's been some issues with prices putting some people off, but do you see that? Do you think there's potential in Latin America to keep increasing indefinitely?
I think so. Well, not indefinitely, but in the short term, the answer is yes. Now people is invested in technology, so better nutrition, better feeding strategies. Definitely improving in the feeding strategy, all these automatic feeders, it helps a lot in reducing the FCR.
Okay.
So that's one part that is basically very important. The use of paddle wheels, some artificial aeration, it helps because you are increasing the stocking density. You can put more animals. Another part, then the animals grow so well that before there was a shrimp cycle in grow ponds, it was 90 days. Now it becomes 80 days, 60 days.
Right.
So definitely per year you can have more crops or more harvest. So that's probably one of the ways the shrimp industry is growing. And you have let's say that you have a 25 grams shrimp in 60 days, 65 days.
Okay.
Definitely it helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And but is that not, are you not in danger of going down the Asian path and going towards over intensification? Is that a concern, or do you just have to be very careful about how slowly you intensify?
Yes, and there are several ways to intensify, because one way is to put more animals per square meter, but it may be risky if you think that you have endemic pathogens.
Okay.
You always have any pathogen that could put at risk your industry, especially as long as you increase the stocking density, you will have more probabilities to have some sanitary issue. But as I was mentioned, the other way to intensify is to be more, how would you say that, to optimize the way you culture shrimp. For example, nowadays people use nurseries. So basically the shrimps, they don't go directly from the larvae culture to the grow out ponds. So they grow it's like a pre-grow out phase.
So it's a three-stage strategy.
3 stages.
Okay.
And then what happens is that you are saving, let's say, 15 days or 1 month. And then the grow ponds can be stocked in more times during the year. And that's a different strategy. And in somehow it's intensification.
Okay. And is there kind of in terms of there's technification, and presumably there's a lot of knowledge in the industry now that's getting better and better, and you're getting more and more specialized in terms of what people are doing. How is that impacting your production?
Yes, I think that's a good point, because before you have the biologists and the technicians to feed the shrimps. Now, when you realize that you have to go a little bit deeper, you need to analyze data, you need to see in detail what are your problems. And now, thanks to the data, some of the companies, the most important companies, they realize that they have to go to take a look of the data. So they are collecting data all the time. And then you have to go in detail. So basically, the companies are recruiting talent in different aspects. Let's say that I want my animals to grow better, so they go for a people who has expertise in genetics. So they have that team. I want my animals to grow better, so you have a nutritionist, so you can have some talents. And then in animal health as well, you need animals to be healthy. So at the end, you put a team of people with particular talents, and that's where I think the shrimp industry is going.
Okay.
It's not only to put the animals and feed them. Now you have to be more creative and make sure that everything goes well, and that is part of the strategy, I would say.
Okay. And you have a tough job by the sound of things. If you were to ask if you had 3 wishes or 4 wishes or 1 wish for how to make your job easier and the whole industry do better, what would you come up with?
Well, definitely, I would say to have resistant animals for white spot, because it's by far probably the worst pathogen for the shrimp industry globally. Any country, I remember I have the opportunity to work in Saudi Arabia, and they were facing major outbreaks because of the white spot.
Okay.
In every industry, even Australia, years back, they also face white spot in Peneus monodon. So yeah, definitely in the ideal world is to have animals that are resistant to white spot. And I would say they have to be a definition between tolerant and resistant.
Okay.
Because when you see tolerant animal, they have the virus, but they don't die from the virus. But if you have a resistant shrimp, the animal is not infected by the virus.
Okay.
But of course, it will bring some other issues, because if everybody is free of white spot, the demand is going to be huge.
Yeah.
So,
well, production will be huge and prices will go down.
exactly.
There's always a kickback.
That's true.